Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. Towards the end of its summer season, Pitlochry Festival Theatre will present the world premiere of a new play by Peter Arnott, Group Portrait in a Summer Landscape, set in a Perthshire country house during the Scottish independence referendum of 2014, directed by David Greig in a co-production with Edinburgh's Royal Lyceum Theatre. The main character, Rennie, is played by John Michie, best known as D.I. Robbie Ross in TV's Taggart, and his friend Moon is played by fellow Scottish actor Benny Young. I spoke to John and Benny while the production was in rehearsal and asked them to explain what the play is about. First, here's John.
I play a character called George Rennie, who's described as a difficult bugger. He's been a difficult person in the Labour Party for 40 years. He has developed cancer, which is metastasized into his spine, and he's going to die. And so he pulls together all his friends and family in their house in Lochranach for a weekend celebration, ostensibly for the fact that it's a retirement. He doesn't tell them that he is about to die. Benny plays my best friend, Jimmy Moon. And he's probably the only character that I'm completely at ease with, apart from possibly my daughter Emma, played by Sally Reid. And it's a kind of sort of like I guess it has elements of Chekhov in it, in that there's a sort of, they're out in the country in a country house, a strange bunch of people all brought together for a rather strange reason, and things happen and don't happen. It's set just before the 2014 independence referendum in Scotland, and that's for a very good reason, because there's a substantial amount of politics in the play. In fact, my character is a university professor of politics and history at Glasgow University, and I think that's set it up fairly well for my friend Benny to take over.
Well, I think what happens is there's a great danger of, it sounds rather dull. It's got this tight group portrait, figures in a Scottish landscape. Who wants to go and see that? But it's actually, and John described the play absolutely perfectly. However, within the play, the elements are the things that certainly work for me, and I think for an audience, are the relationships between them. There's an awful lot of emotion swirling around, but as John said, in a kind of sub-Chekhovian way. And for me, the appeal of the play is about how people react to each other. Not to put too fine a point on it, there's a great deal of pain happening on stage. But our director, David Greig, his job is to say, when does the pain reach number 10? Or is it always, and how is it? Is it most people are living with pain on 6, but occasionally it just goes whoosh. And of course, that's for me, that's what makes it exciting. And who doesn't like to see people emotionally tortured on stage? That's possibly one of the funniest things you can ever see, So it's like that. And I have to say, Peter Arnott, who wrote the piece, I've worked with him before, and very often in rehearsal, he's not precious about things. He goes, oh, well, we'll change that a wee bit, or we'll cut that, or we'll do that, which is great up to a point. But when you get to my age, I'm thinking, please, just let me have the words so I can learn them now,
We're 2 weeks. Are we 2 weeks into it? We've had 3 drafts already, and a mass. One of them was a massive restructuring with completely new scenes that came out of left field. So, but it's very interesting working with the writer in the room, though, isn't it?
That's great. It's the best way to do it.
It's just, that's wonderful. I think that's the most exciting thing about. For me as an actor, new writing is what I want to do. And to be doing it with someone like Peter Arnott and directed by David Greig, who just injects so many fantastic ideas, gives you so many roads to go down that perhaps you might not have thought of, well, certainly me. Do you agree, Benny?
Yes, absolutely. That's the thing. And as I say, I think audiences, people like to be told stories. There is a story here. And it's all about, I keep saying this, the emotional journey that these people go on, and David will select that line, whether it's incredibly emotional or whether it's, for want of that terrible phrase, underplayed. I use that. He hates me when I say that. I've never knowingly underplayed anything in my life. There's actually a stage direction in it. It says, one of my character and two others, exit the stage discreetly. I have never exited a stage discreetly in my life. Should not be allowed.
Well, they're paying to see you act, mate.
Exactly. When people come along here, John does kind of subtle, sexy acting. I act. People have paid money to see me demonstrate how an actor acts. You know, that kind of thing. It's really good.
Yeah, you've got to make an entrance and make an exit. That's
absolutely. You know,
when Benny's on the stage.
Yes, and also I have to say,
usually standing behind me, making faces.
But I have to say, we had costume fittings yesterday. Really nice costume. The rest of the cast have got to be so jealous, so jealous. They've all got fairly mundane, everyday clothes. Me, I look gorgeous, and I'm hanging on to that.
You need it, mate.
It's a serious themes, obviously, serious emotion. But one thing with Chekhovian was also mentioned I noticed in the press release for it. One thing with Chekhov is, as long as it's done well, there's a lot of humour in there, and it sounds like you're having some fun putting it together. Is the humour in the play?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a substantial amount of very dark humour, which is for me the best kind of humour that you can deliver on stage, and it's all it's just kind of there in the writing, in the subtext, and a lot of it will be to do with the direction that David leads us. But there is a lot of humour in it, in a very sort of dark way. Yeah,
I mean, there is that thing, is that the frailty of human beings, and I think an audience recognises it. They go, I mean, I hope they would sit there and go, "Oh my God, that's me." Oh, how silly, you know. Why was I worried about that spoon being there when in fact it's totally irrelevant given the fact the world is burning or something like that. But it's it is one would hope. I mean, the terrible thing about that word Chekhovian is that because it's been done so badly, a lot of time people think, oh, we're in for an evening of culture, you know, and significant theatre. Whether it's culture or significant theatre is irrelevant. People have to be entertained. And I hope that we're going in the right direction to make it an entertaining and informative evening, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we are. I mean, and Chekhov done well is entertaining.
Yes, absolutely.
Very, very entertaining.
Great.
And this will be as well, for sure.
Yeah.
But you've effectively, with David Greig directing, you've got two playwrights in the room. Do you think that makes a difference, the fact that David's a playwright? He said he hasn't actually directed anything since 2017.
I don't think it... I mean, I think what you would get from what I'm getting from it is David's care with the writing, as it were. And he will actually say to Peter, I'm not sure about that. Do you want to do that different? And that kind of thing. But the thing that's impressed me in the rehearsal room is the care with which he tries to get whatever the story is out. What is it we're actually saying here? And also, one of the things that are in the play is there is time shifts. We go between 1994 and 2014. And it's a minimal set, et cetera, where we're in a cliff, we're in a study, we're in a bedroom, we're in a kitchen. And David is not going to make it, he's not going to spoon feed the audience. The audience are going to have to catch up. And I think the benefit of that is when the audience go, oh, that's where we are now, they will feel better in themselves because they've got it. It hasn't just been handed to them. Do you know what I mean? Maybe I'm not explaining that very well, but I actually think even though someone comes to the theatre to be entertained, I think they like it when they have to work a wee bit, you know, just to put the pieces together. And I think, I mean, that's the fine line, but I think David's actually very good at saying to Peter, what is it we're actually saying here? Would it not be better if we said that earlier or later or something like that? Yes?
Yes, yeah. And I think what's interesting is that the first draft I read back in May, had no flashbacks in it whatsoever.
Right,
and since
yes.
David and Peter have been working together with us in the rehearsal room, we have these, I think we have about 4 scenes that have been completely new scenes that have just come in. There might even be 5 of these flashback sequences, which have really kind of released the play, I think.
I think so.
I mean, they're difficult to do, flashbacks, but I think David's such a great director that he will find a way for the audience to know that we're jumping back 20 years. I mean, that's an indication of how much the whole piece is in progress. It's changed quite substantially. Not just a line here and a line there and a bit, and, adjust a scene here and adjust a scene there, but whole new scenes have come in. And whole scenes have been taken out that I'd already learned, so I'm really pissed off about that.
It's exciting, though, isn't it?
It is.
It's very exciting.
Yeah,
It is.
The other thing about David Greig directing is that you say it's set around the 2014 Scottish referendum, and he was all over the various Edinburgh festivals that year, talking about advocating for the yes vote, which didn't happen, of course. So I can imagine there are some quite in-depth discussions in rehearsals about the issues, are there?
I'd say yes and no, in that, as in fact your character says in the play, the 2014 referendum kind of liberated, certainly in this part of the world, a lot of people to vote for the first time ever. I'm not talking about young people. And it was, everyone was pretty well cognizant of the politics that were going on. I would say it was a very, very stimulating time for people up here. So I think a lot of people got it. But again, we as working on stage can't guarantee that the audience will remember that or understand it. So that, I suppose there have been some kind of discussion. And the other thing is that you hear this so many times. You think, okay, the play's set in 1994 and it's 2014, but it's so relevant to today.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Nothing changes or have the same problems regardless of how many hoops we jump through.
Yeah, the same problems the Labour Party has. I mean, I would add to what Benny says, but when I was sort of doing some research for the character, I found out that he would probably have gotten his first job at Glasgow University in 1972. And that's when Jimmy Reid became what's it called? The
Upper Clyde Shipyards.
Yeah, no, but the not the provost of the university. What do you call it? Which
rector.
Was the rector. Thank you. I get very forgetful in my old age.
Yeah.
The rector, and which was brilliant for me because I had felt that Jimmy Reid would be the kind of character that George Rennie had looked up to when he was younger. And one of the things that Jimmy Reid said about revolutionaries, which George would consider himself to be, is that a revolutionary always questions everything all the time. So that means your politics can be fluid, of course. And I think one of the problems that George has with one of the characters that he lectured in university in this play is that he has become stuck in a political party and therefore is no longer a revolutionary. So when you were talking about David all over the yes vote, yeah, absolutely, as many of us were, but a lot of people have moved in a different direction. Either way, from yes to no, no to yes. And obviously, Brexit's been a huge influence on everything. So things change. Things are fluid. And I think that's an important part of Rennie's character.
Yeah, Peter Arnott himself said about your character, he isn't based on anyone in particular. What he represents for me, however, is a whole generation of left-leaning public intellectuals who very much shaped my early life and the fabric of our collective thought back in the day. Does that ring a bell with either of you?
He didn't want to name it, but Peter went to Cambridge and he talked about being thoroughly blown away by Raymond Williams.
Yeah.
when
the Long Revolution.
Yeah, and it was just that kind of thing. I mean, obviously, there's no question. Peter has created characters. They might take a bit from different real people. But he has created. That's why your character is unique. It is completely. He only exists on that stage, and that's why I'll go back to it again. That's why he's entertaining, because he says things that Raymond Williams or that kind of ilk would never say. And as we say in the theatre, never cut funny. So there are bits that are funny, which none of these intellectuals would ever have dreamed of saying, But that's the theatricality of it. And more interesting, it doesn't take away from academia and the seriousness and the importance of it. However, when you're representing them on stage, it's slightly different. It's like, to be derogatory, a bunch of nerds at Cambridge, right? They're brilliant in their heads. They don't make eye contact with you. That doesn't mean to say they are not valuable human beings. Why do they have to be social butterflies? It's their brain, it's their way of thinking that we want. And I think Rennie becomes, this is such a circular thing, Rennie becomes a much more interesting character, charismatic person. And as your partner said, he's a very sexy academic. You don't get, and you don't see many of them. Let's be honest. That's what's good about it. John can portray that character and have something else that makes it much more watchable and interesting. I'll have the fines now.
Yes, thank you for that, Benny. It's all a lot of nonsense, isn't it?
Do you think that's a dying breed, that sort of left-leaning public intellectual? It seems in these days of populism that it seems they seem to be disappearing a bit.
Yeah, it does seem to be, and I think that's what's interesting about this play is, it's only set in 2014. It's not that long ago. Yeah. But I love the sort of spark between Rennie and Moon. It's great, even though we don't have an awful lot of scenes together, do we? But when we're on stage, you just know that there's something there, that they have, Rennie's sort of been a Trotskyist most of his life, nearly all his life, except for the point I made about revolutionaries always question everything always. And Moon is a Leninist, and you can see that they would argue constantly about dialectics, blah, 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 all of that kind of stuff. But also, they're just good friends who like to have a laugh as well.
You're also, I think you're being a bit harsh there, because, the intellectual giants of Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg have kept us, not only for their politics, but their charismatic personalities. They've kept us riveted to the television and that. What are these people going to say and do next?
Yeah.
You can't get more interesting or sexy than that.
Yeah, well, as in modern politics, some people might say that Gordon Brown is the nearest equivalent to the sort of public intellectual in politics. I don't know what you think about that.
I would agree. Yeah, it's like Gordon Brown doesn't play the media game, and that's difficult. That is really difficult given the way how politics is conducted today. And so he must drive media people mad.
It's interesting too, because I met Gordon Brown once, and his first it was over dinner, so it's a substantial amount of time, and he always came across to me as the kind of dour, son of the manse. But he's not He's a very vibrant, funny, full of energy human being, and so his public persona was completely different from actually how he was in private. I thought that was interesting, and I tried to have a little bit of that in this character of George Rennie.
You've both been involved in Scottish theatre and English theatre for a long time. I was speaking to two of the cast of Gypsy, which is on at Pitlochry at the moment, Blythe and Shona White. I asked them about what it's like at Scottish theatre and how things have changed, and Shona said she doesn't really know, because when she started as an actor, the thing to do was to move down to London or to move down to England. And so, she hasn't done much in Scotland. You're both known as Scottish actors more, I think. But how have things changed, do you think, for Scottish actors? How has Scottish theatre reputation changed, do you think?
I think that's more a question for you. You've done more Scottish theatre.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I always say Scotland is a small place, and it's kind of like you have less anonymity here. So you're, in a funny kind of way, you're much more in touch with your audience, I think. People will stop you in the street, whereas they wouldn't do it possibly in London because of the anonymity of London. How has it changed? I can't really think. It sounds silly, but I just do plays. I just, I get up, I go to rehearsal, and I do it. If I think too much about it, I'm not really sure. All I can tell you is that it's always been a question of money, and things have shrunk all the time. And when I first started out, you would have cast of 20 on stage. Now there's 9 of us in this, and that's considered
a lot.
A big cast.
Yeah, big.
And it's all about accountancy in a way that never was before. Things have to be costed and paid for, but I don't think it's just about that. And how can I say? I don't think Scottish theatre is particularly Scottish in any way. I think possibly our small nation thing. We like to think we are outgoing. We can do a drama set in Glasgow that's blah 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 blah, but it's a drama that I feel could be transferred to Madrid or Buenos Aires. Anywhere there's an urban situation, there's the same problems. I don't really know. I'm not explaining this very well,
but all theatre should deal with universal aspects of human life. And even if there could be a play that is kind of introverted and small, but it's going to be dealing with bigger themes. So, theatre should be inherently international, wherever it's done, even though it might be set in a parochial situation.
But have things changed for you as Scottish actors? I'm reading Alan Cummings' latest book at the moment, and saw him at the book festival in Edinburgh last year. And he said in that when he was a young actor, his agent told him when he was going to auditions to pretend to be English, to put on an English accent. Have you experienced that sort of thing? Have things changed in that respect?
That certainly isn't the case now. I mean, that certainly used to be a case, or certain things, I don't think you used to get people saying like, well, you see, I don't have an accent. And I go, you mean you'd come from the south of England? Of course you have an accent. It was that kind of imperialism, if you like. But no, that doesn't happen anymore. And anyway, you've got so many terrific actors. Like, used to have great footballers. Now we don't. We have great actors now, So I don't think it's
not a thing anymore. No. But I can imagine Alan telling that in a very funny way.
Arch way. Yeah. What's the woman from the Royal Shakespeare Company wrote the book about your own voice?
Cicely
Berry.
That was a great, again, liberating thing. It's not about pretending you come from somewhere in the south of England. If you're doing Shakespeare, you just try and it's got to be coming from you, because you have the same thoughts and feelings as the character had, that kind of thing.
Yeah, something else I've just read in Alan Cummings' book, he said that the first time he did Shakespeare and made the decision, he was playing Lady Macbeth, and he made the decision to keep his Scottish accent, and it suddenly opened up the meaning for him. It suddenly felt more natural to him.
Mm.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
It simply shouldn't matter. It's more of a feeling of how the character speaks rather than in what accent your character speaks, and that's what you're trying to get in rehearsals, is a feel for who this character is. And as you start to get that, then the delivery begins to come for free, which includes the accent.
Yeah.
There's all that. It's more about the internal than the external.
Yeah. So how are you finding, I know you've worked there before, Benny, how are you finding Pitlochry as a theatre to work at?
Well, I'll give you an example yesterday, but it's a peculiar rehearsal period. But John and I were both called into costume fittings yesterday. And then we had, about 11:30, that was it for the day. We had to go in. And it was an absolutely glorious sunlit day. So we thought what we'd do is we'd go for a walk and do lines and talk about the play, just make it. So we did, and we headed up towards Benvrackie. And we thought, this will take hours, but we've only got a limited amount of time. We've got to come back. So we went up to Benvrackie, above the tree line, looking around. Absolutely stupendous and still working in a funny kind of way. Enjoying ourselves, but still working. And then we came back down, and there was a nice hotel. Yeah, we had a couple of superb pints.
We went to a happy place.
A happy place. And we
but we were still working, though.
Still working. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
You all these people who trawl for fish and are down mines and things like that, they don't realise that when we're sat there with a couple of pints in front of us, we're still working. Anyway, but it was glorious. And the thing about Pitlochry is the situation is superb. It's a glorious place to be, and it's so kind of easy to go and find yourself in the middle of a forest or up at the top of a mountain or something like that. It's lovely,
Oh, it's beautiful.
That's a privilege.
Red squirrels everywhere. I mean, where else would you see red squirrel? Just beautiful wee things. I'm sleeping like a baby here as well. Something to do with all the fresh air coming up from London, and I'm so used to all the pollution that I don't know. I sort of wake up early, but here, oh my God, I don't normally go to bed before midnight, but here I'm in bed by 10 o'clock and sleeping 8-9 hours every night. That's why I look so exhausted. It's just too much sleep.
It's supposed to be good for you, sleep. I've never found it so.
It's absolutely fantastic. It's such a beautiful place to be. And the theatre is lovely. It's a lovely stage. Love the auditorium, nice and bright, big glass windows looking down onto the river, and it's a fabulous place to come and see theatre.
The only problem is in 2 or 3 weeks' time when we have to step on the stage for the first time, it will seem less attractive.
It will,
for
indeed.
a couple of nights as we try and solve our laundry problem. But it's a lucky, nice place to be.
Yeah, I've spoken to a few of the actors who used to do the rep season in Theatre by the Lake in Keswick, which is similar to what's happened there. And they had the same situation. They had they were there for several months doing different plays, and once they're all up and running, they have the daytimes to themselves in the Lake District. So you've got all that. Once you've finished daytime rehearsals, I suppose you can explore the landscape a bit more.
Yeah. Is the Theatre by the Lake and Pitlochry the last two places that have this repertoire?
I think so.
And it's in repertoire there, isn't it?
It was. I'm not sure they do that at Keswick anymore. They don't seem to. They used to go there regularly, but they don't seem to do that anymore. But I think Pitlochry is probably the last one now, apart from the sort of limited reps that the RSC and the National Theatre do.
And it's nice to be working with my friend Benny here again. What else did we do together?
You interviewed me in Taggart. I'd done something naughty, and you interviewed me. I don't know.
You were a naughty minister.
Naughty minister, I think I was. Yes. And
Rob Drummond, the playwright, is a mutual friend, and we've both worked in his plays.
Separately and different. Yeah, we've done about 3, and I've done about 3. And we've obviously seen
each other and met at Oranmore.
Well, this play, you said about theatre being universal, but this is certainly mired in the politics of 9 years ago in Scotland now. So, what's the legacy of that time that makes the play relevant now, do you think?
Well, if you think of the No campaign being an utterly useless back then, and then you think what happened with Brexit, and then you think what happened to the Labour Party in Scotland after that time, and how that, it's just, politics repeats itself, does it not? There's a lot of things happening then that are similar to now. And I think politically it's actually very relevant. And there's still despite what's happening with the SNP at the minute, there's still a 50-50 split on independence, is there not? Benny?
I would think so, but it's not just, again, although it's set in Scotland, although it deals with the Labour and SNP, etc., people have their own opinions all over the world. We are currently, not to put too fine a point on it, in this country, in a situation where nobody knows anything about anything. And I remember we used to be appalled that the Italian governments that had to reform every 7 months or something like that. And we're going, I think we're heading there. I think we're, it's maybe history is, maybe too many people hanging on to history and thinking we were once the most important country in the world. And that exceptionalism is ours. Of course, it's not. Every day, the headlines tell us of yet another piece of incompetence.
I just cannot believe the amount of coverage this ridiculous situation of Nigel Farage and Nat West is getting. I mean, it's all over. It's all over every newspaper, every news. It's extraordinary. Have we not got anything better to talk about?
Yeah, what about the Women's World Cup? That's a much more relevant thing. Yeah. That is revolutionary. Things are happening there. We should be watching that. Never mind Boris and whoever. Keir. Oh, yes, Rishi, yes. But yeah, I mean, the most important, as they say, the play is the thing. That's the important thing, not these clowns in Westminster. See our play, and then you could have a proper discussion afterwards, And if you care to buy the charismatic John or his little pal Benny beside him a pint afterwards, it would be gratefully received, because that's how we work. We work for coloured beads and cakes of salt and things like that, don't we? All the important things in life,
Yes.
So,
well, that's a good point to finish, I think, on a pint after the show.
Right.
Should we go and have one now?
I can't.
Right.
That was John Michie and Benny Young, who will perform in Peter Arnott's group portrait in a summer landscape at Pitlochry Festival Theatre from the 25th of August to the 28th of September 2023. It will then transfer to the Royal Lyceum Theatre in Edinburgh from the 4th to the 14th of October. For more information, see www.pitlochryfestivaltheatre.com or lyceum.org.uk. You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.